Thank you very much, Dr. Azlina. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone. Thank you, RCEE, for having me here. So I'm going to deliberate on how to manage engagement. So how can we make sure that it is not too much or not too little, and how can we monitor our students' online learning engagement? And so that comes to my first point. From findings by a study that says interaction in online courses, more is not always better. While we are very eager to learn or to use many technological tools to promote engagement, to promote online engagement, of course, we have to be aware that we have to create a sense of balance. Now, this study is way back before pandemic. And of course, I have to explain the context of this study, which is this study is carried out among the postgraduate students. So this is a study on online MBE courses. And what this study found is that they kata the learner-learner interaction is negatively correlated with delivery medium satisfaction. Meaning to say that the more we ask our students to pay attention to certain interaction, the more likely they are satisfied with their learning environment. So this is what this study says. But of course, I have to mention again that this is among the postgraduate students. Meaning to say that we have, this suggests that there should be an optimum level of engagement. So we have, while we are creating or using many technological tools for teaching and learning, we have to be aware of the optimum level of engagement. But then if you ask me, then again, is there any optimum level of engagement? How do we identify that? What is the optimal level of engagement? This study again, there's this another study investigating about students' disengaged behaviors. So they try to predict what are the behaviors that can show that these students is going to be disengaged. I think Dr. Tazli just now explained about what are the causes of disengagement. Now this study explained the patterns of behavior. And then they found out that this study is about, I think this study is among the middle school students, okay, students in middle school. And then what they say is that, what they do is that they carry out small tests, vocabulary tests. Apa yang dia buat, what they did is that they asked the students to answer, to give meaning to certain words. So word number 1, and then word number 2, word number 3, and then they asked these students to give some meaning to these words. So it's a vocabulary test. And what they found is that students are more engaged if you give them high cognitive tasks. And however, when they start to give more or less, you know, you give all the way high cognitive tasks, and then these students become less engaged. Okay, the first question is a very difficult word that you have to define. The second word that the students have to define is still a difficult word. The third word that the students have to define is still a difficult word. So 1, 2, 3, the 3 first words that the students have to work on is still engaging their is still engaging the students cognitively. However, after reaching the 5th and the 6th words, the students become disengaged because they were given continuously high cognitive tasks that demands their attention and their effort. So they found out that if you repeat, no matter what kind of, what level of complexity is the task, although we want to give the students high cognitive tasks, but if you continuously giving them high cognitive tasks and then you repeat that one, it also encourage disengagement. So this is what they found. And when they do another test, when they put these words, okay, remember just now, the test is about the students have to give meaning to words. So it's a vocabulary test. Now, when these scientists, they put the words in context. When they start to put words in context, and then they ask the students to give the meaning of the word, and then they start to be engaged again. So this is what they found, meaning to say that you can give students high cognitive tasks, but it has to be various. It has to be a combination of high cognitive and also maybe low cognitive tasks. And then if you want to repeat that one, do not repeat that, the same level of complexity, make it various. And to make it even more engaging, or to make sure that their retention to the specific task that we gave them is sustained, try to put things in context. So this is what they say. However, it doesn't really says, or it doesn't really answer the question about the optimum level of engagement. But this is what we can somehow do to make sure our level of engagement, is somehow not too much or not too little, I would say. Okay. And although we cannot define how can we know to what extent our engagement level is optimum, but as what Prof. Karim has mentioned just now, you can design your learning engagement. And when you design your learning engagement, then you have to monitor so that we know, are we giving more, or are we giving too much, or are we giving too little? So I'm going to talk a little bit more on this. Although Prof. Karim has mentioned just now, in engaging students online, you have to make sure they are cognitively engaged, they are behaviorally engaged, and they are effectively engaged. If you want to design that one, I think this is a very similar steps that all of us have taken in designing our online learning setting, in designing our online course. You just take simple step of EDI method. So you just analyze your learners, and then you design your learning environment, and then you develop your materials to meet the design, and then you implement that, and then you evaluate the overall running of your course. Of course, there are many other instructional design model. We call this as instructional design model. You can use many other instructional design model, such as rapid prototyping and many of that. But the thing that I want to highlight here is that it has to be planned. Your engagement has to be planned, and it has to be planned systematically. And how can you do that? You can, follow this step or any other step as advised in the instructional design model. Once you have designed that one, make sure you make alignments. Now, all these 5 steps just now, EDDIE, in the AD model, in the model that I showed just now, later on, you will come up with this kind of constructive alignment. Now, if you see here, you have set the learning goals, you have identified the delivery mode, you have identified the type of assessment that you want to carry out, you have identified what kind of activity that you want to carry out that aligns with your learning goal, and then you have identified what are the resources or the materials that you want to use to achieve your learning goal. So maybe you tabulate that one, and then only you make it engaging by putting technology in. So what I wanted to say is that do not have technology first in mind, but try to fit in technology later once you have tabled out your alignment. So if you see here, the technology part is not even part of the table. So it's just that, you have an assessment, and then you think, okay, I have an assessment. So how do I make this assessment even more engaging? Then you say, okay, I want to use Socrative. And then you already have in mind the activity that you want to carry out that can lead to your learning goals for that day's session. And then you say to yourself, okay, how do I make my learning activity more engaging? Then you were thinking, okay, I want them to do that on Padlet. So I would suggest for us to make alignments, prepare our learning goals, our assessment, our strategy, and our resources first, then only we appropriate that with the suitable technology to make it even more engaging. This is, I think, a very famous wheel. Okay, so what Alan is trying to do, is the creator of this wheel, is that he gathers the learning domains. So we can have cognitive learning domain, we can have psychomotor learning domain, we can have affective learning domain. However, this wheel is about cognitive learning domain only. So you see here, cognitive learning domains means that, you know, they uses Bloom taxonomy, cognitive domain, and then they try to appropriate this one. For example, if you want your students to create something, your learning goals is for them at the end of the lesson to create A, B, C, D, E, anything. So what they were trying to suggest is that what are the suitable tools that is suitable for the activity to create, to achieve the learning objective of creating. If you want your students to, at the end of the lesson, to apply something, at the end of the lesson, the students should be able to apply the Python something in their problem solving processes. So if you want to make it even more engaging, so these are the example of technological tools that you can use fitting to your cognitive learning domain. This is just a suggestion. There are many more, I'm sure. And this is just, they fit this one just to cognitive learning domain. You can have psychomotor learning domain as well as affective learning domain. Once we have made our alignment, now we want to monitor our engagement. So we were saying that, you know, I asked my students to do this, and then I asked my